Good morning, everybody. Sorry for the slight delay. My name is Richard Scott Morel. I'm at the front here is my colleague curator, Paul Skinner, and we're both employed by the British Library to curate the organisation's Philatelic collections, which are incredibly extensive. In addition to that, we also manage all the front and back of house operations that support that collection and involved around them. We'd both like to begin by thanking the organisations of Stampex for providing us with this opportunity to present today, and for you in the audience and online to take time to listen to us speak on introducing the British Library's Philatelic collections. So, today's theme is particularly apt because this year marks the 130th anniversary of the establishment of what eventually became the British Library's Philatelic collections. And it followed the bequest of Thomas K. Tappen's donated bequest of his global collection of postage stamps and postal stationery to the British Museum Library, following his sudden death on the 11th of April 1891. Now, during his short lifespan, which spanned literally 35 years, this prominent philatelist purchased many of the best collections of the day and absorbed them within his own. The museum therefore received a collection global in coverage and almost complete for the years between 1840 to 1890. And it contains countless philatelic rarities, essays, proofs, shades, as well as varieties. And it's now possibly the only major 19th century philatelic collection remaining intact. A responsibility for the collection was given to the keeper of the Department of Printed Books in the British Museum's library. Since Tappan had only written up a small amount of the collection during his life, the remainder arrived at the museum as quite literally a disorganised accumulation of albums, envelopes, and stamps. Possessing no in-house expertise to curate the collection, the museum's board of trustees recruited externally. In May 1892, they appointed the world-leading philatelist Edward Denny Bacon for the job. Working at the British Museum 3 days a week, Bacon's role involved arranging and amounting the collection, as well as writing it up for exhibition. He received a salary of £100 every 6 months, and it was reduced to £75 from the 21st of November until the project's eventual completion in mid-September 1899, so it took him 7 years to work on. 3 years into the project, in July 1895, the Board of Trustees recruited an assistant to help Bacon speed up the project's work. Jane Elizabeth Hamilton, shown here, secured an interview for the post via her friend, Miss Salmon, who was then acquainted with Sir Edward Morne Thompson, the principal librarian at the British Museum. She possessed no knowledge or interest in philately and eventually developed a career in professional photography with her sister. She worked for an average 30-hour working week, and she performed the mechanical task of mounting the stamps under Bacon's direction. Being the first female employee within a collection-based role at the British Museum, she experienced initial difficulties in receiving her salary. However, Bacon's assistant quickly redressed this issue, and her salary was settled at 1 shilling 6pence an hour, which was reduced to 1 shilling an hour between 1896 until the end of her contract in 1897. The following page here from the New South Wales section, page 100 of the Tappan collection, depicts Robert Clayton's famous 1849 essays. And the page itself provides philatelic rarities, an example of the philatelic rarities you would encounter, as well as an example of the type of work they've done. The British Museum's acquisition of the Tappan collection generated much contemporary interest, with the public eagerly awaiting its exhibition. In 1897, King George V, then the Duke of Edinburgh, even arranged a private viewing of the collection with the museum's authorities. Now, to satisfy public expectation, Bacon began exhibiting small amounts of the collection within book presses located in the King's Library at the British Museum as early as October 1893. Now, these pages were continually changed over as work on the collection progressed, and announcements were made in the philatelic press, letting the public know this. By 1899, Bacon had completed his work, and he began considering ways to exhibit the collection in its entirety on a more permanent basis. In 1900, following several aborted ideas, Bacon submitted the successful proposal for a set of vertical wooden frames containing slides. The precise specifications for each cabinet have been determined, and the manufacturer commissioned to construct these for about £3,600 on about the 31st of January 1902. Each case was double fronted and it stood about 6 foot high and contained 396 slides worked on brass runners. The slides contained 4 sheets of stamps situated in 2 rows, one above the other. Slabs of pull-out polished wood were situated beneath the slides to act as tables for taking notes for researchers viewing the collections in the museum. Opened publicly for the first time on the 5th of October 1903, people could view the entire collection of postage stamps and sections of postal stationery in the centre of the King's Library during the museum's opening hours between 10 AM and 6 PM each day. A specially appointed custodian invigilated the collection, and the slides were arranged in alphabetical order with the names of the countries placed above each row of slides. Catalogues and an index were also available on the table next to the collection, enabling users to find particular stamp issues for any country quickly. This method of display was not only emulated by philatelic institutions in the United States, Japan, and elsewhere, they've also stood the test of time. Besides a very short period during the Second World War, Taplin's collection was displayed in such a manner in the King's Library until its eventual transfer to the British Library's St Pancras site in 1997. Acceptance of Taplin's donation had ramifications. It placed the British Museum firmly on the world's map for public philately. The presence of 2 preeminent philatelists, one of whom was a future monarch on the museum's board of trustees, focused the institution's resolve to develop the philatelic holdings even further. And finally, the excellent work undertaken by Bacon and Hamilton in curating Taplin's collection crystallised the museum's public reputation as a potential centre of philatelic excellence. In response, the British Museum regularly received additional philatelic collections via donation, bequest, and official transfer. In July 1900, the Crown Agents for the Colonies donated 3 albums to the British Museum Library containing specimens of all the postage stamps manufactured under their direction for use in the colonies. They gave the museum permission to remove, rearrange, and mount the collection as they saw fit, and promised to submit future donations of similar philatelic material in the future. As the collections continued coming in, Bacon faced the challenge of managing them with limited resources to hand. In 1920, he decided to merge the smaller collections and accumulations together to form what we now know as the supplementary collection, which continues on from the termination date of Taplin's collection around 1890. The material donated by the Crown Agents for the colony to the museum in 1900 was incorporated into the supplementary collection, and it includes major philatelic rarities such as these typographed black and olive coloured, the writings of the black and olive coloured plate from the glazed card for the Hong Kong 1860-1874 issue 96-cent stamp. Bacon took a different approach in relation to the larger philatelic collections. He opted to preserve their archival integrity by keeping them intact and not adding further material to them. A practice that now continues to the present day for all of our collections. In 1913, James Ludovic Lindsay, 26th Earl of Crawford, bequested that standing a near complete library of philatelic literature was arrived at the British Museum. Comprising approximately 4,500 volumes, this historic and significant library contains many of the world's earliest philatelic catalogues, journals, and monographs. One of my personal favourites here, shown here, is this rare descriptive price listing catalogue of the British colonial and foreign postage stamps, which was published by Stanley Gibbons in November 1865. So it's actually one of the earliest SG catalogues. In 1919, the British Museum received another important bequest following the death of Richard Williams Harold Rowe, shown here. During his lifetime, Rowe formed one of the world's largest and earliest specialised collections of cyan, covering the period between 1883 to his death in around 1918. Housed within 22 volumes of the collection, it includes detailed studies of the cyan 1883 permanent issues shown here, the small and large Roman surcharges issued between 1894 and 1899, as well as a good selection of cyan postcards and letter cards, amongst other things. In 1953, 1963, witnessed the donation of 32 albums and a box of World Airmails dating up to the 1930s, formed by Miss Augustine Fitzgerald, otherwise known as Sybil Fitzgerald, to the British Museum. She's shown here on this pad. Her collection is full of rarities. It includes the library's copy of the United States of America 1918 24-cent converted Jenny, as well as this pilot's license for John Alcott, which was actually valid whilst he undertook the first non-stop transatlantic flight from St John's, Newfoundland to Clifton in Ireland in June 1919. The museum also received various transfers of official government archives and other public records. One of the major ones is the Board of Inland Revenue Stamping Department archive, which was received at the museum in several intervals from 1996 onwards. Of fundamental importance for researchers interested in Britain's philatelic and security printing industries, it contains proofs of postage stamps, postal stationery, as well as embossed and adhesive revenue stamps, all manufactured under the direction of the Board of Inland Revenue, its predecessor bodies between 1694 and around 1971. There's a large body of proof sheets in black of Great Britain, as well as Indian postage and revenue stamps. And there's a wide range of GB material overprinted for use in other territories, as well as official registration sheets. My personal favourites from this collection include this iconic and unique registration proof sheet, 26 America Revenue 1765 newspaper and pamphlet 1-penny stamps, which were engraved by Thomas Major. And of course, the 1765 Stamp Act was one of the contributing factors to the American War of Independence. So they're not just philatelically significant, they're of primary historical importance here as well. Also, next to it, you can find an imperf paying 40 GB 1930-34 Seahorse High Value 10 shilling stamps, which were officially registered with the Board of Inland Revenue on 4th of January 1926. Another large corpus of official material can be found in the Crown Agent's Philatelic and Security Printing Archive. Once again, this was received in several phases from 1969 onwards, and it comprises the archive of the philatelic and security printing operations of the Crown Agents and its predecessor bodies, and covers a rough period from between 1921 to 2007. The archive itself includes the requisition books between 1921 and 1968, orders between 1969 and 1974, the register of dies and plates between 1923 and 1958, paper issue books from 1940 to 1968, specimen issue books for the 1960s, as well as an enormous extensive collection of proof material between 1913 and 1982, and about 60,000 pieces of artwork for postage stamps and first aid covers from 1948 onwards. And anybody interested in postage stamps, revenue stamps, postal stationery, covers, postal orders and paper money produced for the British Commonwealth will find this resource of fundamental importance. In 2018, the department launched its first kind of Black History Month exhibition entitled Stamps, Independence and Post-Colonial Futures. And whilst it comprised around 800 collection items from the archive, and it included this original artwork done by Victor Whiteley for the Kenya 1963 Independence issue 30-cent stamp, as well as an original proof for the stamp. It's actually been signed and approved by Kenya's first president, Jomo Kenyatta. And actually, in the Crown Agent bulletins, we have a photograph from the signing proof. That was a recent discovery, which we're quite pleased to know we have. As a result of these bequests, donations and transfers, the British Library's philatelic collections now include over 70 major collections and archives, which totals around 8.5 million objects. Funds have never been allocated for us to purchase philatelic material. Think about it. The bulk of our holdings are largely generated from the generosity and largesse of our global philatelic communities. And while I let that amazing truth sink in, let's have a look at some of the major rarities such largesse has left the nation. It's quite a daunting gauntlet, I think, that's been laid down to us by our kind of philatelic forebears. So our treasures include this unused Great Britain 1858-79 1-penny red plate 77, an unused Hawaii 1851-52 HI in US postage 13 cents blue type 1. We've got a lovely pair of India 1854 4-anna blue and pale red error head inverted, 2 used on cover. Mauritius 1847, post office 1 penny orange red used on cover. And finally, at the bottom here, this unique Switzerland Zurich 1843 unused horizontal strip of 4 rattle stamps. Do you see anything you like? In 1973, the British Library was established by an Act of Parliament passed the previous year. And the Act transferred the collections in the British Museum's library, Department of Printed Books, and Department of Manuscripts and Oriental collections, which include the Philatelic across to the British Library Board. And following the completion of the British Library St Pancras site shown here, the Philatelic collections moved across to their new home in 1997, where they currently reside today. Now, unlike other Philatelic holdings, the British Library's philatelic collections are part of a much larger institution, and consequently, although our core focus is upon philatelic research and the community, the department also has a very long history of delivering services and supporting research to audiences outside of the traditional collecting community. Such an institutional setup doesn't come without its own issues, but I think Paul and I could both agree that the benefits of this actually far outweigh the drawbacks. So our 10 grade 1 listed philatelic display cases situated on the upper ground floor of the British Library St Pancras building remain the first and major point of contact between members of the public and British Library's philatelic collections. Half of the type of collection is on display at any one time, and in addition to this, significant amounts of Crown Agents Philatelic and Security Printing Archive are there, as well as our Bojanowicz collection of Polish 1938-1940 postage stamps of postal history, and the Moseley collection of British African postage stamps to 1835, amongst others. Now, the 10 cases contain 1,000 frames, capable of exhibiting between 80,000 to 100,000 items at a time. And that constitutes the library's largest permanent exhibition space, and it attracts thousands of visitors each year. Now, closed to the public during the pandemic, I'm pleased to say that they reopened publicly in August this year, and that, after this, if you have time, Stampetti, you decide you want to have a look, feel free to travel to the British Library to have a look at them during the library's opening hours. We also regularly collaborate with curatorial colleagues across the library to contribute collection items towards the library's larger non-philatelic exhibitions. So between the October 2017 and March 2018, the library launched its exhibition Listen, 140 years of recorded sound in its entrance hall gallery. And the exhibit was reflecting on the importance of sound in recording our lives and cultural heritage, in addition to the impact of radio in the 20th century. And it showcased our set of Bhutan 1972 talking standards from the Universal Postal Union collection. The department has since contributed material to the recent Women's Rights exhibition, exploring representations of women in STEM and women in science, as well as the Paddington Bear exhibition held last year and this year. And some of the original artwork from Crown Agents Philatelic and Security Printing Archive will also be showcased in a major exhibition scheduled for open in 2023. So the British Library's philatelic collections also include a dedicated reading room for anybody wishing to conduct research on the collections. And this is an image of Paul and me here working on the very collection of First World War postcards for a previous exhibition. And it provides a very rough idea of how to set up the reading room setup. This area is used to kind of aid on site. You'll notice in the second picture that there's a present quite a lot of books. So we have quite a significant library of philatelic literature in our reading room, and we use it to aid on-site researchers as well as answer the slurry of kind of email and written inquiries we receive in every day. And people who come to the reading room, of course, we also have that curatorial assistants on hand to help with either handling and interpreting the collections. Now, previously open to members of the public on a first-come, first-served basis between Mondays and Fridays, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We, like many other cultural institutions, were adversely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and forced to close the public service. Although individuals can now view the philatelic display cases in the upper ground floor and order the philatelic microfilm and Crawford library material in the Humanities 2 reading room, our reading room is currently closed to the public. Nevertheless, we are actually in the middle of preparations to ensure a safe reopening in the very near future, so watch this space. The department's also continuously involved in various engagement activities with philatelic communities. We host on-site visits and tours of philatelic societies, so as shown in these photographs. The first photograph here shows a show and tell we conducted for an international group of youth philatelists who visited London in March 2018. And this kind of work also extends to the non-philatelic organisations, charities and community groups too. So a few months after this, we collaborate with colleagues in the Library's Asian and African Studies section to deliver a show and tell event with a local arts charity called The Art, which offered support to the Somali community, and witnessing their interest in the philatelic material, the memories and the emotions instead. I think it's actually one of the highlights of my career because they really engaged with the material and they weren't philatelists at all. So it shows the potential of gaining new audiences. We also accept invitations to give presentations, talks and displays for philatelic and non-philatelic audiences around the country. Sadly, practical issues do render it impossible for us to bring along original collection items, but using high quality imaging and reprographic equipment does enable us to produce quite high quality reproductions. Same for September 2019, I gave a presentation to the Hencke Philatelic Society of Philatelic Treasures at the library. You can see we had quite on the board, I know the lighting is not great. You can see we had quite a wide range of material out. It was a success. We had a lot of interest and a lot of questions asked, and it also led to a few visits. And then in September 2019, we gave a presentation and display on the theme called The History and Politics of Colonial Postage Stamps at St Anne's Public Library in Seven Sisters Road, North London. The event was attended by a diverse crowd, nearly 100 people, and they all came from the local community and were amazed at how topical, significant and relevant philatelic material can be. I think fans of any of the Marvel movies amongst the audience here may recognise the Wakandan salute from the Black Panther film given by myself and the group after the presentation. Perhaps a telling indication of how kind of lively and fun the event was. We made some good friends there. Our engagement regularly went global in the pandemic. Since March 2020, we've regularly participated in online presentations, talks and discussions for organisations including the American Philatelic Society, the Society for Anglo-Chinese Understanding, and the Royal Philatelic Society in London. Our presentation shown here from the Royal Philatelic Society in London on May 2021 on the TAP Convention was attended by over 200 participants from 30 different countries. And likewise, the second image here showing our presentation in December 20 to the Society of Anglo-Chinese Understanding, looked at the life and works of China's first female stamp designer, Tian Zhao, who died last August. Again, we had over 100 participants in Britain and China attending, from university students, A-level students, right the way up to academics. And they were very impressed with the material and its potential for research, and actually got a couple of new collectors off the back of it. So we've converted some young collectors. Awareness of our philatelic collections is also raised across the world via the publication of regular articles published in the Library's various blog sites, and a selection of the examples we kind of found great this migration on US postage stamps from 1869 and 1987. Black, Asian and minority ethnic designers promote late awareness in African and Middle Eastern postage stamps. And finally, the creative genius in Luck, artist, illustrator, stamp designer extraordinaire, which was published in 2018. Moving beyond the library's digital platforms, the department regularly publishes a range of papers internationally in various philatelic magazines, journals and periodicals. In November 2020, Stamp Collector published a joint article titled Algeria, looking at the stamp designs and artwork of Mohamed Hassim, who's an important national artist. In 2019 volume, The Asian Philatelist, we published a bilingual article looking at the early postal history of the English Joshan in 1700, which includes some of the earliest entires in Britain received from China with postal markings or bishop markings. We're going back 1700, very early examples. Finally, in December 2020, in the London Philatelic, we published a brief guide to Crown Agents, Philatelic and Security Print and Archive for specialist George VI material, but it gives a good overview of the major collections. So if anyone's interested in getting an idea of what there is, please have a look at it. Another facet of such public work includes attending interviews to advocate philately the community of philatelic research to the community itself and also to cultural professionals worldwide. So last year we participated in a Stamp Collector article titled "We're in this together, how philately met the challenges of 2020." And at the start of 2021, another article, "New Frontiers of Philatelic Research," shows how you can use museums' digitised collections to conduct quite original postal history research. We also highlight some of the challenges in cataloguing and the obstacles they put in the way of collectors. Finally, in August 2021, the Academic Professional Librarianship Journal Series Review published a big interview with us showcasing the collection and highlighting future directions for philatelic material research in cultural institutions. Now, the collection management and curation of the Tapping collection in the British Museum's library during the late 19th century and early 20th century had a profound impact on management, arrangement, and curation of the library up to the present day. And we're trying to expand on that legacy laid down by Tapping and Bacon well into the 21st century. And Paul and I are working tirelessly to develop, preserve, and make these collections available for everybody. And one of the important ways of achieving this is through our planned digitisation projects. So at present, we're in the process of creating 700 DPI TIFF images of over half the Tapping collection, as well as the relevant metadata, in the hope that we can get the entire collection online, freely available for research in the next couple of years. Likewise, in 2016, Paul led this project, so to expand on it. We worked with the Royal Philatelic Society of London and Global Philatelic Society to release 600,000 pages of copyright-expired text from the Portal Library online. And during the pandemic, it's really been an amazing piece of research. Once complete, 1.5 million images should eventually be available. So individuals wishing to learn more about our work and collection should consult a guide to the philatelic research at the British Library published in 2019 by our former curator David Beach, copies of which are available to purchase from HXL's for £10.95 plus postage and packaging. A range of additional guides are also freely available on our Philatelic webpage and the British Library's website. So I think you've listened to me quite enough now, so I'm going to hand over to my colleague, curator Paul Skinner, who will discuss some of the exciting new acquisitions which have recently been acquired. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you all for sticking with us. I'm just going to read through some notes on some of the acquisitions that we received recently. And then if anybody has any questions, if they'd like to fire them away, we will try to answer them. So, okay. The British Library Philatelic collections are never static. They expand and grow continuously. Without intermission throughout the 2 world wars and now 2 global pandemics, new acquisitions have continually arrived. Via donations and purchase, our world-class library of philatelic literature includes monographs, serials, periodicals, journals, and catalogues, and continues to grow at a rate of about several meters each year. It contains publications from across the world, covering every conceivable philatelic and postal history-based subject, from the beginnings of philately to the present age. Such literature is not only philatelic significant in its own right, but fundamental in maintaining the hobby and our identity, supporting the interests of our collecting communities, as well as promoting our interdisciplinary research interests to new audiences. During the pandemic, one of our notable acquisitions of philatelic literature included this copy of P.D. Young's book, The Insadara and Co, and their introduction of synthetic and aniline ingredients, 1910, published by the Royal Philatelic Society of London. In addition to the philatelic literature, we continue to receive a rich and diverse range of philatelic collections. donated in phases between 2014 and 2019. Richard, the Hencke Collection, yeah, includes a collection of unused postal stamps issued in the United States of America from 1930 to 2004. That may not seem very significant to you, but from the library's point of view, that is a very valuable resource because we can use it for supporting exhibitions and that sort of thing. It's, as I say, very useful for us. But he also gave us a collection of the postal stamps of China for the period 1912 to 1986, which included the 1944 to 49 Communist border issues, such as this Northeast China People's Post 10th anniversary of the seizure of Chiang Kai-shek and Xi'an, which was designed by Ho Yu. Another example from the collection includes this North China People's Post 1949 stamp printed at Shijiazhuang with the transformation of the People's Republic of China into a global power since the reform and open era. Such stamps are becoming an increasingly popular and important area for a variety of academic and philatelic researchers. Another important collection was acquired in 2016, donated by the Smithsonian National Postal Museum. It comprises of United States revenue stamps in this form as proofs in the period from 1916 to 1970. So these are duplicates of things that the Smithsonian own, but this is the only set of this type of material that they released to another museum. Some of the material that they sold themselves. So the holding includes revenue subjects, including for payment on tax on food, drugs, documents, and taxable consumables. So what we're showing here includes the 1939 firearm transfer tax $1 stamp, the US 1947 one-barrel fermented malt beer stamp, and finally 1953 cigarette class A series stamp. So it's a very diverse holding of revenue issues. And I'd just like to add that other areas of philatelic collections include very significant holdings of revenue stamps in that type of material. We've an important archive that we've recently received is the archive of Jennifer Toombs. Includes a lot of artwork. So beginning from photographs, rough designs, straight to finish artwork that we used in stamp design. So this issue is this particular illustration is artwork used to develop the Mauritius 1981 issue. The presence of a 1976 British Library postcard that Jennifer is holding there that illustrates a Persian manuscript depicting the Kanzer exam is an excellent example of how wider collections have impacted on stamp design and printing. Finally, British Library recently received a collection formed by John Holman, a name that may be known to some of you. It's based on 1950 to 2017. John was born in Kent and studied economic history at Bristol University. The collection has been donated by his brother Richard Holman, so it might be appreciated by a wider audience and available for research. John will be found many collectors as he joined Stanigans in 1980 as assistant catalogue editor to Jim Negus and was appointed editor of the Bookstack Monthly in 1985, a post he held for 3 years. After he left SG, he took up a post at Royal Mail as editor of the British Philatelic Bulletin from 1988 until 2010, and as editor of the Postal Bulletin. He started collecting at the age of 7, and he began writing about Philatelic about 20 years later. He was a member of a number of philatelic organisations, including the Royal Philatelic Society in London, of which he was a fellow, and the Cinderella Stamp Club, and it's a signature of the Morris Williams role of the notable Cinderella artists. He wrote over 3,500 articles and book reviews and edited numerous books for standard films. So with a repertoire like that, it's not surprising that John's interests were quite diverse. And so one aspect of the concentrated on were the modern aspects of Great Britain Postal Services, including studies of recorded delivery mail and other premium postal services. Cinderella material includes an collection of omnibus parcel stamps, scout posts, and modern railway letter stamps. There are collections of Great Britain and Scottish Islands postmarks and stamps, particularly Smiths being Lundy Island, collections of the postmarks of mainland Scotland, including 2 postal stationery, official mail, including Royal Household Mail, OHMS stationery and stamps, and the list goes on. The holding is extensive, with over 100 volumes, and is the product of a true collector with an eye for the unusual and the interesting. So, items from his collection that were illustrated here includes a cover addressed to Queen Victoria from John Brown. You will be familiar with that relationship. And also this page of Royal Mail Special Delivery labels. So it goes from things that are quite traditional in terms of collecting through to things that are quite modern and in the future will be of great value for research. So just to sum up, we were established 130 years ago following the bequest of Thomas Philatelic collection in 1891. British Library's collections continue to expand through generous donations, requests, and on behalf. We administer more than 70 major collections, totaling in excess of 8.5 million items. And it's just Richard and I who look after the collections. So you can understand we're doing a lot. We could do more. It's just a 2 of us. These resources, coupled with the British Library's wider collections of printed books, manuscripts, and archives, can be said to be considerable justification to constitute the National Philatelic Collection of the United Kingdom, as well as a global philatelic research resource. As expected from one of the world's foremost state-funded national philatelic institutions, our organisation is open to everybody. And I just emphasise that we are approachable, no matter what stage you're at. Please address us with your inquiries. We may be up to help, or we may be able to put them in the right direction, but we're always pleased to receive such inquiries. And having gained some insight into who we are, we hold the work that we undertake, that individuals in the audience and visiting standards will feel inspired and have the confidence to reach out, use and engage with the British Library's philatelic collections. that's all I've got. Thank you very much. If anybody has any questions, we'll do our best to answer. Yes, sir.
Yes, you talked about the material that was donated to you from the Smithsonian. I'm wondering what your own disposal policy is in terms of gifting or permanent loan to other museums or museums, or whether any of the many items from the museum you have are so surplus to requirements that they didn't consider or are able to actually consider placing something as a first-hand market.
Our collection policy in the first place is to avoid accepting duplicate material. So we have been offered material in the past for the collections that we've actually said, thank you very much, but we have this already, so we don't want to collect duplicate material. So in the case of the Smithsonian, I think that was an extraordinary case because they had literally hundreds of sheets of the same thing, whereas in the library, the amount of duplication is very, very limited. And we have a policy that we don't actually really have no intention of releasing any of the material either to another institution or onto the market. That's because where we do have duplication, it's part of archive, and we feel that as an archive it has to be kept intact. So although in some respects you might look like a duplicate item as part of the archive and that has a value in its own right, and so therefore we don't have any intention of making the material available. Yes.
Wondering whether there is any handbook or guide summarising, say, a page collection of what's at the library that you could put on your website, maybe as a PDF, that would enable people to discover the collections more readily.
Yes, and that you raise that. There is a work by David Finch, who is the former director of the collection, which is available. There is a guide on the internet. You have to search about it for it. It is there. I think that the guide that was produced by David is an excellent work, and referring to that in the first instance. We're looking at ways in which we can actually improve the listing on the web pages. We're always looking at web pages to see if we can do something to improve our presence there. And it's certainly something that's we're hoping to improve.
Having asked you about your disposal policy, I suppose I'm next to ask you about your acquisition policy in terms of whether you have a fund effectively to go out and purchase things, or if so, are there particular areas that you are looking for lacking in the collection that you feel perhaps you ought to have? And as a supplementary to that, did you consider, or were you in a position to consider bidding for the British Guiana Magenta?
Well, the short answer to that is we don't have an acquisition budget, and we've never had an acquisition budget, and so that therefore we've never been in a position where we can go out and buy material. Perhaps the library knows if they gave me a pot of money, I'd spend it very quickly. I don't know. The British Guiana, we have some very good British Guiana within the taproom collection, but it was something that we just weren't in a position to raise that sort of money to buy on. Actually, what we tend to find here that we're missing and that we require that we get inquiries for most of all from our colleagues who are doing exhibitions on modern issues. So things that are, if you like, on a sort of thematic basis, if you like. So at the moment we're preparing something to do with environmental issues. So we're looking at ecological things and that sort of thing that they can use in the exhibition. And in those instances, we tend to just go and buy them if we don't have them because they're not very expensive. It's not an ideal, you know, we'd like to have absolutely everything, but it's just not possible to manage that. And as I said, we don't have an acquisition budget. So we, you know, because it's only for modern issues, it's usually something that's relatively inexpensive. We just we have a very small fund that we can buy individual items from for that.
Like Paul says, the collection really tails off around 1992. We'll get regularly more post-1992 material. In addition to that, often if there is something that the library needs, it's a couple of pounds, we'll buy it at our own private funds and donate to the library, which is something we don't have to do, but we're dedicated to try and get into. I think the thing about receiving material, it's not something that you can really define clearly because each individual collector has their own interest, their own passion, their own niche focus. I'd say we're open-minded to any offers that are put before us. We'll look at whether we can duplicate existing holdings and take protection on a case-by-case basis based on its own merits, which I think is important.
Actually, the donation, the process of donations for significant items is not as straightforward as it might be because we have within the library there is something called a heritage acquisition group, and they have to okay major acquisitions, and they look at things like whether it's something that will fit in with the library's collection, generally within the library's policy, whether the provenance of the collection item, how much it might cost to store the item, whether it needs to be rewritten, remounted, the costs involved in that. So there's a range of issues that are looked at. It's not just a question of saying, here's collection stamps, thank you very much. We do consider it quite carefully before we accept anything. Did that answer all your points? Okay, anybody else? Well, thank you very much for attending, and if you feel so inclined, then please stop. Rich and I will be here for a little while longer. So if you want to call us individually, then please do. Thank you very much.
Yeah.